I was going to say, how well did you handle Southland Tales?
No. I at one point, I literally shout so hard that my microphone just decides to break because I was so mad trying to remember this movie that I nearly cried. I had a mental breakdown editing it. I was like, why? This is a man going through hell.
That film is on my list of ones where it's like, I must give that another watch, and then just go,
No.
I can't. And it's been years.
You can listen to our review and just feel like you've harmoniously watched it through us and go like, okay, this is a piece of shit.
Primer.
Oh, yeah. Primer's a good movie. Just multiple viewings you have to watch too. Right.
Well, I watched it on Christmas Eve, and then on the way back from my friend's house, because me and my friends had like a group Christmas dinner pre-Christmas, and I rode a scooter at the time, and on the way back, I crashed, which I'm pretty sure is because I was trying to work out Primer. And I was in hospital on Christmas Day with 2 broken wrists.
Oh, dear. God.
Oh, no, you overthought Primer. That's a crime.
Primer and wound up in hospital.
Now that's an anecdote. That's a Christmas story, I tell you.
You are about to experience trash cinema.
Everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Trash Tapes, where one man's trash is another man's treasure. I'm your host, Johann Chipol, and the inflictor of pain, and I'm here, as usual, joined by my tag team partner, my victim and DJ, Edward Harvey. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I'm all oiled up, and I've been at bars trying to start fights, but there's no one there at the moment, so it doesn't really work.
This is true. You can't actually go anywhere, so you're just walking into an empty bar, oiled up, going, ah! And just, there's no one here. You know what the funny thing is? Out of context, if we don't explain what this is now, it just sounds like a weird, kinky Thursday night. Yeah. It is true. But yeah, we've got a very, very special episode because at the time of recording, about 2 weekends from now, it will be Wrestlemania. Ooh. And so we wanted to approach a wrestling movie, but we didn't want to do this alone. So we decided to turn this into a triple threat match. We need to bring someone else here who can handle it all, right? We need someone who can understand no disqualifications, no count out. Only way you can leave this movie is by submission or pinfall. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Carl Bryan, how are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me. I'm totally ready. I've been working out in my own private gym with my name plastered on everything, as we see in the movie here. Lot of neon.
Have you been smashing cinder blocks, Carl?
Well, doesn't everybody smash cinder blocks to get ready for some one-on-one grappling?
Yeah. Oh, it's so special. But before we even tell us what the movie is and what we're breaking into, Carl, do you want to sort of introduce yourself to our listeners about like what you do, etc.?
Yes, I'm a podcaster myself. I host a show called Cerebral Jukebox, where we talk to people about songs that get stuck in their head. And I'm also a regular panelist on the Red Dwarf podcast, Shipwrecked and Comatose, and the new show that's coming out called Did You Even Watch, which should be out probably by the time this comes out, where we're covering sort of shows that got cancelled and sort of hidden gems of television. So the first series, we're covering Ultraviolet from 1998 with Idris Elba.
Oh, cool.
Ooh, that is niche. I like that. So yeah, it's good. I'm glad. It's good to actually have now a fellow podcaster to help us with this as well, because I think we need a little insight. But we're doing a wrestling movie, so I want to ask you basically, why do you think I picked you for this?
I've made it clear over the years that I am a huge wrestling fan and have been since the age of about 9, up until this present day. And this I think you need to be of a certain mentality of having watched wrestling for a long time to watch something like this and not go, oh, this is just dross. Whereas if you are a wrestling fan, you will go, this is dross, but it's wrestling dross, and I kind of feel like I have to defend it a bit.
A tiny bit.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm glad we have someone to help it be a little bit of its tag team partner, to tap it in every so often, because the movie we're about to talk about is the infamous Hulk Hogan leading role movie, No Holds Barred.
Hey, are you looking for a little escape? Want to see something
This is sick!
you don't see every day? Are you ready for a whole new Hulk Hogan? Hulk Hogan is ripped. To the world, he's a hero. But to this man, he's history. Zeus. Stand back. Way back. Get ready for the battle no ropes can hold. No ring. No referee. No rules.
Gentlemen, it's time.
No holds barred.
This is an unprecedented display of strength and determination.
Oh, a little Ric Flair at the end there. So, okay, so just to clarify before we actually go into No Holds Barred and go to like the details, the data, everything else I usually do before we actually talk about this special piece of cheese. What's everyone's relationship with either this movie or with wrestling in general?
So I loved wrestling in the sort of 90s, like early 90s. I think I watched it most. But I can remember the late 80s. I was really young then, but I had like the toys and stuff in the late 80s. And it was only on Sky. I didn't have Sky, so I used to like watch it on like rent videotapes from Blockbusters and stuff. But I was really into it when like Hulk Hogan and like Macho Man, the Ultimate Warrior, kind of they were the big leading guys. I was a big fan then, and when I revisit wrestling on like the network, I always go back to that era because that's the most fun era to watch. I think when you revisit like pay-per-views and stuff. And then I got into it a little bit again in the early noughties. So like the Attitude kind of era. I was into it again then. But I'm back into it again now. But I don't quite like it as much as I used to, but I still watch it, you know.
I think that's the sentiment of most WWE fans these days. Like, you know, it's not the same.
Yeah.
I'm watching it anyway because, my goodness. Yeah. Carl, how about you?
As I say, I've been a fan since I've been 9 years old. I never got into football or rugby or any of those things. For me, it was wrestling. I grew up in a VHS shop, in a video shop, and I ended up watching, I think we got about 4 WrestleManias in one weekend to put in, and I ended up watching, I think it was 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that was prime Hogan, Warrior, what Ed was saying, that era. And then it's just carried on from there. It's kind of expanded since now. There's a lot of wrestling about these days, a lot of British wrestling. I've helped out at British wrestling shows. I know a few British wrestlers. And I watch a lot of wrestling from random parts of America as well. So I got very much into a federation in North Carolina that had been running for years and all this kind of stuff. And I still love it, and I've loved it to this day. WWE, I must admit, I have trailed off in the last few years. It's become very, it has moments of greatness in there, but a lot of it is absolute sort of treading water. It was why I've gone into more AEW and that side of things, because I was a WCW kid growing up.
Yeah, same here. I was also a big WCW fan, which is why it's kind of weird looking at AEW and going like, wait a minute, this is kind of like WCW. The Sting's in there again. What happened with Sting? Oh, what's happening here? There's cruiserweights. What's happening here? It's literally, it's just the modern version of WCW.
Sting's in and they're treating him with actual respect.
That definitely seems to be a theme with like proper wrestling fans tailing off WWE and going to AEW as their main go-to.
It's like, and it's just like in the early noughties as well. You had like TNA when it was decent. And so on and so forth. But there's a lot of, but basically, so we can all kind of say that we're all to some degree wrestling fans, but I kind of feel like we've all at least got our kick in from the lingering age of the golden era of wrestling. But yeah, so this is the perfect framework for this, because obviously in July 1989, around basically what's considered the peak of Hulkamania, the peak. Produced by Michael Rachmil and directed by Thomas J. Wright, was written by Dennis Hackman, but it was also executive produced by Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan. So, in other words, they had their mitzy grips all over this, and you could see it.
Didn't they just pretty much rewrite it?
I heard that. They locked themselves in a motel and rewrote it in a night.
Yes. So I'm going to get to that in a moment, because this is another thing. Had little limits on it, because this movie was, even though it was owned by WWF, at the time, right? It was under the name Shane Distribution Company, which basically was a way of saying, hey, this has nothing to do with wrestling. This is just it's not a wrestling product, even though it is totally a wrestling product. In case you know already, Shane Distribution Company, Shane McMahon, Vince just named it after his son. And also, there's another cute little gesture that when they finally opened a music division, which they did, they called it Stephanie Music Distribution Company. So there you go. So Vince McMahon, even though he seems like this heartless bastard, has named entire companies after his kids. Sums it up, really. But yeah, this was, like I said, this was an attempt to boost Hogan's acting career 7 years after his appearance in Rocky III. So, on the pulse of like his momentum as an actor. There's loads of little weird little tidbits about this movie. So for one example, you were right about this, actually, both of you, where the writer wrote a full draft. Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan looked at it and said they hated it. So they went, literally this was like a week before the shoot, right? So a week before the shoot, they went into a motel room and reworked the entire script in 3 days.
I think you could tell.
Yeah. I can imagine it may have been snowing in that hotel room, judging from what they came out with.
It's so mind-bogglingly funny. Yeah, so apparently they stayed up for 72 hours. So in other words, they didn't sleep. They were just going through like in cycles, going like, Hulksters go like, hey, Vincey, you go to bed. I'm gonna write some more stuff about me, whatever it is. And then suddenly Vince McMahon wakes up.
Seconds of me just going,
It's like this. It's like, do you know what this movie needs, brother? More grunting. It needs more grunting.
Imagine that writing session was like a really long, like coked up promo, like just like back and forth.
Vince McMahon has a particular taste in wrestler. Like he likes, and he has a particular style of writing and comedy, right? So I feel like Vince McMahon generally thinks if a man's aggressive, right, or whatever it is, he needs to be grunting, big bulldog situation. Hell, British Bulldog was basically that to a point. And a lot of these characters, a lot of the characters provided in wrestling worked in wrestling to a point, because it is about pageantry and theater and over elaborate everything. Try putting that in front of a movie. In a movie with a very different atmosphere? No. I think this shows that Vince McMahon only knows one thing, which is wrestling. You try and put him and the Hulkster in anything else, and the writing definitely shows that it is haphazard and messy.
Yeah, well, I think some of these things these like sort of plot points happen in the movie are good storylines for wrestling. Like these things could happen behind the scenes in wrestling, but like in a movie, it doesn't really work a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure this will come up as the film goes on. There's a lot of things that happen in this film, which, like you say, in wrestling would be perfectly acceptable, but in the real world, like, that's highly illegal. You know, they just sort of, why has no one arrested this man? You know, there's a lot of things like that happen in this.
Is the movie trying to be kayfabe or a shoot? So basically, what it's trying to say is it trying to say that wrestling is real? And at wrestling, and people are literally punching each other, and all this is sort of like in a real sort of kayfabe world. Like wrestling is real, so everything else in a wrestling show is basically real and everything's all right? Or is it like a shoot, but it doesn't show it's a shoot? So it's trying to hide the fact that it's real, but also trying to pass off that wrestling stuff is real, but it isn't real. And then basically this is the moment where you get the beautiful mind thing when you're writing on a window, trying to figure out what's happening with reality in this movie.
It's weird because obviously in this film it's treated as real.
Yes.
But then I don't know if you were going to mention this. They promoted this film on television by having a match with Zeus.
Yeah.
Saying that was a movie, but he could beat him in a real fight.
Yeah.
So that definitely means that wrestling is real and the movie isn't real. That's what they were going for.
Well, even Brel turns up on WWF television at the time randomly.
Yes.
Even with what happens to him in this film. But he does a whole thing with Mean Gene where he says that the film's a travesty because it's supposed to be Zeus beats Hulk, not Hulk beats Zeus. So it seems like everybody's got their own idea.
But then on top of that, right, it's not Hulk Hogan.
No.
It's Rip. It's not actually Hulk Hogan. So why? Okay, so in other words, if it was in the movie, it wasn't Rip, it was Hulk Hogan, and then Hulk Hogan was versus Zeus, which could have worked because of the weird plotline situation, right? Then you could have brought Zeus in, and then it would be like, oh, it's character versus character situation, but it isn't. It's real wrestler versus fictional character.
Yeah, why hasn't Zeus got a different name in real life then? Why is it's Rip in the movie but Hogan in real life, but Zeus is Zeus in the movie and in real life?
because they couldn't figure, because they didn't know what to do with this. Anyone who's a fan of Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon around this time, especially Hulk Hogan, you know that he was a famous behind-the-scenes booker. He really liked pulling the strings and trying to make sure that he looked great the entire time.
For me, brother.
Exactly. He will not eat a pin unless it's beneficial to him. And that's the thing. He barely ate a pin in wrestling. And when it did, it was like the big, like, oh no. And then he would win. Then he'd win literally the next time on WCW Nitro and just win and lose all momentum.
I think during this time, he didn't get pinned cleanly until 1990, the sort of the Ultimate Warrior thing.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So I don't think he, from a good like 87 to 90, he never got cleanly beaten. Either there's the famous evil twin referee thing.
Yes.
Or he loses by like disqualification or double count out, or it's a draw, but he never got pinned. And yeah, it wasn't until like way after this film that was the case. And even then it got back to normal pretty much after that.
It's basically shenanigans. Like it was pure full-blown wrestling shenanigans, the reason why that's the case. And I think this is the reason why I think it shows a little bit in his writing. And this is why I feel like the writing's very confused. Because Hulk Hogan, as the icon Hulk Hogan at this moment, where he was on television, he had his own cartoon show, he was on lunchboxes, everything, right? Eat your vitamins, brother, blah, 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 right? So he didn't want to ruin the image. So they made Hulk Hogan in this movie as we go along, and you'll notice it as a very confused. I was confused watching what side is he on. Was he heel or face? I couldn't tell anymore. But there were moments where he's sitting there going like, yeah, this is to show like, yeah, I'm good. I'm the good guy. I'm great with the kids. There's nothing real about it. It's all cartoonish, right? But that contradicts half the stuff that's in the movie for every other character, which makes them all look like dicks.
Yeah.
So many dicks. This is the biggest dick list I think we have on the show because everyone's a dick. Oh my goodness. Tiny Lister, who plays Zeus, right? He the reason why there's not many lines for him is not because they're trying to make him tough, is because the script was being rewritten so often they didn't know what to give him. So they decide to keep him mostly quiet and grunting.
Yeah, he's mostly just roaring throughout the film, isn't he? Like,
yeah, I'd love to see the actual script, the manuscript of when it gets to Zeus, what it actually says.
I would have loved it if Zeus actually, the first draft where Zeus was quite eloquent and said like wonderful soliloquies, and then it was just cut off and say, no, that's making him look too smart. We need to make him look like a brute. Zeus.
what, you mean like a Chris Eubank type? Like,
Yes!
It would have been interesting for him to be like he is in the film, like when he's on camera in the film, and then when they show him behind the scenes, he is like, well, that went very well.
I would have loved it. Oh, that was indubitably fantastic. I was absolutely and utterly wonderful. I grunted the best grunts I think I've done in my entire career.
Darling, you were fabulous.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And the thing is, that you can almost kind of see as the writing goes along in the script that I think it's a combination of, like I mentioned, Hulk Hogan trying to look his best because they don't want to make him look like shit, and also Vince McMahon having a real dig at certain kinds of people, particularly TV companies, and trying to do his business. Like, no, this is my business, basically. So I don't know if that was a good Vince or not. I feel like doing Vince hurts my throat.
yeah, totally.
It's not. I mean, he's always done it though. Whenever he's wanted to pick on somebody, he'll have done something like he fell out with the Inland Revenue, so he created the Wrestler IRS.
Yeah.
Yes.
He fell out with the Parent Teachers Commission, so he created the right to censor.
Yes.
So he's always been that level of petty.
Right. So let's go into one of my favorite things when we're looking at bad movies is the reviews and the box office reception. And oh boy, there's some interesting things here. Okay, so this movie is interesting because this movie actually debuted at number 2 behind Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So
Which shocked me, that it was number 2.
It was number 2. You know, it's like, you can never be my number 1, but number 2? You know, Hulk would not have been happy about that, right? It sold about $400 million in ticket sales. And apparently what it was, that the budget was about $8 million, which is all right, as it were. And there's been rumors around that Vince McMahon said the movie just broke even. So if we know about how movie things work, it's usually in order to break even, you have to double your budget. So this movie made about $16 million worldwide, which is something very, very special. But however, the movie has been critically panned, as you could, I think, obviously, no shock there. The film was panned by critics. At the moment on Rotten Tomatoes, it's just a whopping 10%. On Rotten Tomatoes, based on 21 reviews. But everybody has said terrible things, right? For example, if one film critic said, it is tremendously crude, unapologetically manipulative, and aimed directly at easily entertained 13-year-old boys.
Yeah.
Can't agree with that. Yeah.
Can't argue with that. But here's the thing. The reason why I want to pick this up is because there is one review, just one, that I have to read in its entirety because I think it is the biggest diss I have ever heard. It's so salty that you might as well just put it in a bacon sandwich. So, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Desmond Ryan, has remarked the following, and I'm going to read this. Get ready for this. I wish we had some classical music underneath. I'll put that in post. So, for months now, Dennis Hoffman and Robert De Niro have been sitting in their dens and nervously clutching their Oscars. They knew that an unprecedented challenge was looming in their preemptive standing among American actors. The arrival of Hulk Hogan and his first starring role in a movie. Rumor had it, and No Holds Barred confirms, that the great man would do a love scene and even essay an emotional breakdown at the hospital bed of a crippled brother. There is no limit to what the Hulk can do on stage and screen. After all, who's going to summon the nerve to tell him he can't? This is that's too true. He may one day want to try Hamlet, and I can see the billing now. Hulk Hogan versus Felonious Polonius. But from what I hope is a safe distance, let me point out a few things about Hulk's work in No Holds Barred. It needs work, Hulk. That's literally in the review. It's literally going up to him going like, it needs work, Hulk. Buddy, Bubba, it needs help. To watch him is to behold the craft of acting placed in a half Nelson and gleefully choked to death. Oh, cretins and people who take professional wrestling seriously, and I'm bound to say the distinction between the two groups is lost on me, will flock to No Holds Barred and will not be disappointed. Pro wrestling is notorious for grotesquely bad acting masquerading as entertainment. That's a stab in the heart. And that, along with the screenplay and direction of spectacular crudity, is what you get in No Holds Barred. Hulk Hogan popped up in Rocky 3, and in No Holds Barred, he achieves the rare feat of making Sylvester Stallone seem sophisticated. Clearly, Hulk is a man of many parts, though none of them should include a part in another movie. It's all right, Dustin and Robert. You can now go back to sleep.
I mean, the Stallone thing, that's... Oh,
wow. I read that, and I just said to myself, I have never seen a review so salty in my life. Holy shit, that hurt on multiple levels.
I can imagine that guy looking like the waiter in this movie.
Oh my God, I bet you secretly it is the waiter in the movie. Just saying like, Hulk Hogan insulted me. Well, I'm going to insult him back.
I'm going to use all my power at the Philadelphia Inquirer to bury this man.
Despite this, in a weird way, the movie got, even though the box office success was just breaking even, apparently it did surprisingly well on VHS and Betamax and Laserdisc, which came out in October 1989. Okay, so there was loads of trying to hype this up, and they did surprisingly well. Not enough to warrant what was going to happen here. which was the aftermath of this after, but enough to say, there may be an option here. So they did a massive, huge advertising campaign for this. Now, Carl, you're aware of this, aren't you?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
So this is the No Holds Barred, The Match, the movie.
The match! Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake, no holds barred, in a steel cage against Macho King Randy Savage and Zeus, the human wrecking machine. The movie, Hulk Hogan as you've never seen him before. No holds barred. The match, the movie, together make the greatest tag team in sports entertainment history, exclusively on pay-per-view.
Yes, The Match, the movie. It was a double bill on, I want to say NBC, where they were doing Saturday night's main event at the time.
Yeah.
And it was a tag team steel cage match between Brutus the Barber Beefcake, who, as a lot of people know, is Hulk Hogan's best friend, or was at the time, and Hogan, versus Macho, might have been King at that point, Randy Savage, and Zeus in a cage. And then it would be followed by the I'm guessing the television premiere of the movie. I've seen the match. It's a terrible match. It's the fact that you've got to, if you put people in a cage, it's for two reasons. One, you really want to play off the hatred between these two combatants, or in this case, four combatants. Or two, you're really trying to cover up the fact that no one in the match can wrestle, or very few of the combatants can wrestle. So we're going to use the cage, which at that point was the big blue cage, which you couldn't really see into.
And it was also the one that I never understood it because it's supposed to have been inside a steel cage. That looked plastic, right? That was a plastic cage.
I don't think it was plastic, but for the fact it was painted blue. But if you see it, you'll see, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, the promo that Zeus, Macho Man and Sherry cut for this, where Sherry has a cauldron with dry ice coming out of it.
Yes!
Oh, yeah! Oh, zero weather! Don't be frigid, feel the heat! A one-way trip to the sun! Summer Slam gets hotter and hotter and hotter! Sensational Sherry and the madness, yeah! Sensational Sherry after the yellow and the red, and Brutus the Barber Beefcake go down to Zeus and the Macho Man, yeah. They say that Miss Elizabeth may or may not be at ringside. If I had my rathers, I'd rather her be there. And Sensational Sherry, if she is there, and after we destroy him, and after they feel the heat, what are you gonna do to Miss Elizabeth? Tell me, yeah.
I'm gonna take you and I'm gonna stomp you onto the floor. Then I'm gonna pick you up and I'm gonna put you into the cauldron of madness. And I'm gonna stir it ever so slowly. And I'm gonna melt you down till there's nothing left. And as the bubbles rise from the cauldron of madness, tiny particles of you will just evaporate.
I mean, we joked a bit about it earlier, but the amount of cocaine in the WWF during the late 80s, early 90s must have been immense.
It was
probably in that cauldron. And it was on the fumes off the cauldron.
They must have just popped their head in every so often saying, all right, everyone dip your head into the cocaine cauldron. We need to come up with ideas. So yeah, we all know that Tiny Lister was not a wrestler, never had the time to be a wrestler, and never really, in a weird way, even though he wanted to, never really could pull it off. So they had to find multiple ways to hide the fact that he couldn't wrestle, okay? So he wrestled in only 3 matches in this entire time, each of them supposed to be leading into a build-up. There was supposedly a 4th that never happened. The first was a tag team match, which was basically the same kind of tag team match they had in the steel cage. So this happened at SummerSlam. So it was Randy Savage and Zeus versus Hulk Hogan and Bruce the Barber Beefcake, right? So
I watched that one. That one was good. Well, I say it's good. It was just funny. It's not a good match.
Because Zeus, and this is something we'll talk about in the movie, Zeus only seems to have 3 moves, which is punch, choke, and push. I'm convinced that's literally all he can pull off.
You forgot about the pec twitch. That's a good move.
Yeah, that's like a taunt you do, like when you were like playing like WWE, like we were playing No Mercy. You just do a pec taunt. I remember that one actually.
Thing is, every time Macho tagged Zeus, he just smacked his pecs. That's how he tagged him himself.
Because he's supposed to be brutish and wow, okay? Then there was a second match. There was a second match somewhere in between, but it doesn't actually say where it is, but I think it was possibly Survivor Series? It must have been Survivor Series, where it was an 8-man tag team match. 8-man, so that was hiding even more the fact that he can't wrestle, where he was eliminated by disqualification. So,
yeah. Okay. I mean, I remember all of these matches because I'm a fan of OSW Review, and they covered the whole Hulkamania period, including the Zeus thing. There is a bit where before he wrestled any of these matches, I think it's where he first turns up, it's Hogan versus Boss Man in a cage, which in itself is a really, really good match. Surprisingly. But Zeus is stood on the stairs as Hogan's coming towards him, and he's just like arms folded. And they sometimes in wrestling, and you've probably seen this numerous times, they will put a mic too near to a wrestler who thinks they're off mic.
Yes!
And Zeus is... he's not looking at Hogan. He's looking over Hogan's head and like to the back of the room for some reason. And all you hear him say is go, fear me, ha. And he really emphasizes the ha. And you're just like, okay. And I remember as a kid people in the playground telling me, like, he can't feel pain. But then Hogan figures out that there's like a weak spot, like a boss in a platformer, and the weak spot's between his eyes. And only now I realise that that's not part of the storyline at all. No. It's just that they do the thing of Hogan's run out of ideas. So what do? Just twack him right between the eyes and see what happens, and it works. Because
it did kind of work in the movie at some point where he does the double axe handle in between the eyes, I guess. Yeah. But it's never really played a part in any storyline or anything else. It just happens to be a way to find so that you could knock out Zeus without putting any extra work. This then eventually led into its own thing, which was a no-holds-barred, the movie, the match, which was a steel cage match. Now, this was a thing. This was roughly the same time. So in October, the VHS and the Betamax and all that came out, right? Then this came out as a pay-per-view. So you had to buy the pay-per-view in order to watch the match, which was supposed to be the blow-off match. But it wasn't really, because they wanted, if the pay-per-view sold, rumor has it that Zeus versus Hulk Hogan was going to main event WrestleMania 6.
That's crazy. I mean, would he have to actually do a bit more wrestling training for that? I would have thought, because all the times they've put him in matches, they've disguised the fact that he's not a wrestler, like putting him with other people. But if he was by himself with Hogan, he would actually have to do a bit of wrestling, surely.
Yeah, but if you think about it in the movie, they don't wrestle anyway, so it would have just been that.
Yeah, but with a movie, you can do it differently. You can you can cut it with different angles and stuff, and you can make it look good.
It's a live reenactment of that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, over the years, there's been a few celebrity matches, and they've all been worked. So, one, you put them with somebody who can make them look good. A good example of that is when Lawrence Taylor headlined WrestleMania, the football player, and he wrestled Bam Bam Bigelow.
Yes, I remember that.
And Bam Bam Bigelow basically flew around the ring for him and made him look, in terms of like celebrity matches, really good. But it was very apparent at the end of it because Lawrence Taylor couldn't stand. He had to be picked up because he was so exhausted. Then you've got things like Floyd Mayweather when he wrestled at WrestleMania. Big Show. And that was done to make him look, really good. They could have done that with Zeus, but I don't think they would have thought about it in that way. And the person who could have done that definitely wasn't Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, because Hulk Hogan would say, I'm not going to lose to a fictional character. I think that's what his brain was. I'm not going to lose. Hulkster doesn't lose to a fictional character. So he has to win. All the matches that Zeus was in, he lost. So in other words, he was never considered a threat anyway. So to have him as a main event after that would not have worked unless somehow Zeus actually beat Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. And WrestleMania 6 was the big one in Canada that was in the Sky Dome that was like 50,000 people. So it was like one of the biggest shows they'd done in a good few years. And to put Zeus on with Hogan, what ended up happening was Warrior Hogan, which was infinitely better than logic and physics dictated. And they did minimal stuff in that match, so it could have worked, but I don't think anyone would have bought into it.
Nah, I think that match. I remember that match. I remember watching that match. It was the Intercontinental Champion versus the WWF Champion. So it was literally just a battle of the champions. Yeah. So for that point, you didn't need a storyline. You didn't need anything. You're just like, I'm the champ. We're going to beat each other up because we're both champs. Who's the better champion? Easy, right? With Zeus, it was weird how there was something there, but they just didn't book him right. And oh my God, this is now changed into a wrestling podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We're just going to just go into wrestling. But realistically, it's so bizarre that they decided to do this for a movie that even at launch was already considered a stinker, and they tried to milk this as long as possible so that they could try and break even, because they can clearly see this is Hulkster's first attempt at a proper mainline movie did not go well. Let's promote the shit out of it.
I mean, I like the idea of it. It's just, if the movie was actually good, it would have been amazing. Like, sort of, the whole package would have been really good. But it's just the fact the movie's shit, so it just didn't work. I admire the idea.
You admire the grapefruit of Vince McMahon.
Yeah,
for pulling this off.
They had so much money at that point. It's like, let's just try stuff, see what sticks.
So much cocaine.
I mean, they tried to do it in recent years. I think it was, 2006 or 7, when See No Evil with Kane came out. And that's not bad. It's not hard to, it's kind of hard to mess up a big man slasher, sort of chase kids around an abandoned mausoleum or whatever it was. But that one's actually good. And from what I understand, See No Evil 2 is actually better. But so they even tried doing that with a storyline on television, where he kept having things about May 19th and something big's happening on May 19th, which was the film premiere. Because technically that storyline never got properly resolved, because people were still saying, what was the whole May 19th thing? If you didn't watch the movies, you would have been really confused as to what that was all about. Yeah, I think it got explained like afterwards in a throwaway line. It was like, oh, that was when my parents when our parents' funeral home burnt down. And it was like, right, well, surely that happens every year, and you've not really given us stuff about it until now. It's like, you know what, we need to slip this in. The only other time they've ever, not WWF in this time, the only other time this was ever really pulled off was the WCW fiasco, which what's the name of that movie again? I forget, but it stars David Arquette. Ready to Rumble, David Arquette, the free stages of hell, the gigantic free layered cage match, and the fact that David Arquette won the WCW Heavyweight Championship. Even though he didn't want to, Russo, who's also very high on lots of cocaine, said this will be great. So, well, I don't know if you've had a chance to see, have you seen the documentary that's come out? I think it was last year. I haven't, but I heard amazing stuff about it. Yeah, it's interesting because he took a lot of stick for a long time. And I've watched this documentary, I think it's called You Can't Kill David Arquette, or You Can't Stop David Arquette. Yeah. And it's about him basically coming back to wrestling to basically go, I know what I've done, kick my ass, and, you know, let everyone go home happy. And he does, basically. I've watched a couple of the matches. One of them, he gets, like, sliced open with a light tube. He basically, all the matches he agrees to do are against people who you take one look at and go, they're going to kill him. And they do. It's kind of like, I think it's basically like just like a stress relief in this point. It was sort of like all the build up of people who are fans of WCW and say like, you're the reason. And it's like a weird scapegoat idea when really WCW had way too many problems, more problems. But it's like, you represent that thing that I used to like and now was hated, so I'm gonna bust you wide open. I think that the whole thing would have probably been accepted a lot better if the film wasn't a massive slap in the face to anybody that liked wrestling. Kind of a little bit like this movie. Yeah. This one, I'd say, doesn't insult wrestling fans as much as Ready to Rumble.
Pay-per-view patient. Order now through Centcom Cable Television. Phone 552-2288.
Let's finally, we have talked enough about genuine wrestling. I think it's about time we actually try and attempt to actually talk about this movie. Now, in order to talk about the movie, realistically, you don't really need to know a lot about the plot. The plot's kind of jumping around all over the place. Realistically, all you need to know is Rip, played by Hulk Hogan. He is the current WWF champion, which is we're going to break it down in a moment. WWF champion, and he's just doing his thing. Unfortunately, then he has been forced into some weird ass positions by by Brel and a few other people as well in this in the world. Is it a World Television Network? I believe it.
Yeah,
the World Television Network. So WTN, and for some reason they really want Hulk Hogan or Rip to be a part of their TV. Sort of as part of their network in some way or another. I'm not sure. I don't think these guys know how wrestling works. But therefore they try to say, well, if we can't have him, we're going to try and find our own wrestling organization or something like that, which leads into the introduction of Zeus. And so the whole thing is just basically him and Zeus screwing over with Rip to try and find ways to get into a one-on-one match, the final match to prove who's superior in the battle of the tough guys, which is, no offense, is the worst name for a tournament.
And the best,
Yeah.
in terms of a comedy way.
You say they don't understand how wrestling works when they're having the meeting at the start.
Yeah.
The rival TV executives, they're saying, whenever Rip's on television, we're last in the time slot. If you're last in the time slot, there's a fair few channels between you and whatever's top.
Yeah.
So, Rip being number one is not your number one problem. Your network's crap, basically.
They never want to acknowledge that it's their fault. They're just rubbish at making TV shows.
Yeah, it's like what they don't really mention what they're putting out when they have the meetings. Like, oh, what should we do? Or we could do a game show, or we could do a new primetime drama. This Brel just like, no, it's got to be wrestling because that's what's number one at the moment. Which I suppose fair enough, but it does show that Brel's not really running a tight ship here.
Mr. Brel, I'm told that Rip's word is his bond.
Bond? Then we get him to break his bond. What's his price? That's what I want to know. What's his price?
With all due respect, Mr. Brel, others have asked that question.
He smashes the paperweight.
Every last one of you, spare me your mealy mouth with all due respect crap. What this network needs, this network gets. I promise you that.
Ugh.
We also talked about like the fact that Rip is a little bit different to Hogan in terms of like he roars a lot, doesn't he? Like when you first see like the character Rip, his entrance is this. I'll play this.
Go on.
And his opponent, the World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Champion, Rip.
It's weird he's just called Rip.
I mean, this is like 70s Hulk at this point. Like, Incredible Hulk.
And what you're looking at during this noise is a close-up of him in silhouette, shaking his face with sweat and, I'm guessing, slobber coming off him.
Yeah.
Like Hooch from Turner and Hooch.
Yeah. And it's like backlit as well, so everything is like sort of all this spit and everything is like glowing. Like,
I mean, who's going to look at that and go, "That's my guy"?
He looks terrifying. And look, instead of like Hulkamania and so on, they just do slight things. For example, instead of doing that, instead of the Hulkamaniacs, stuff like that, the crowd's going, "Rip him. Rip him, rip him." And there's a funny thing as well. In this sequence, there's some terrible dubbing. There's some really bad dubbing of Hulk's, who doesn't even sound like he's tired and running around going, "Yeah, brother, rip him, rip him, rip him." I'm like, that sounds like you are in a studio instead of being in the stadium.
Yeah.
And they're not even trying to cover that fact. You can see his mouth going and something else is coming out. I like the fact they throw in more lines when his head is turned, because we're introduced to Randy and Charlie.
Yes.
Who, if you've ever watched wrestling, wrestlers don't tend to bring their real life little brother and their coach with them, like in a boxing match. And Mean Gene, I don't know why this line tickled me, but he goes. "There's a very special relationship between Rip and Randy going on, Jesse." And you're like, what?
It's like, they're brothers.
And then it says, "But when their parents died, Rip became much more to Randy than just a brother." I was like, oh, right. But that first line, it was a very Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson sort of Batman 66 feel to it.
Slightly homoerotic duo.
Yeah. And it was bizarre. But I was like, why would you bring your little brother with you, sort of, to the ring? I mean, I understand when we see later on what happens to Randy, it's why you would do it, but it's just quite odd.
The whole thing is quite odd because, just like we've kind of been mentioning throughout so far, is that it doesn't know whether it wants to take it as wrestling or as a real sport. And it's been like that the entire time. So in other words, in a real sport, like in boxing matches or later on like in UFC, you'd have an entourage come with you into the ring and you'd do the support thing and be like, whatever. Unless Randy and Charlie are both like official, got manager's licenses, I don't know if that would be allowed.
Yeah, this is the thing. It wants to, and I know in real life, Vince McMahon, before taking over wrestling, promoted boxing.
Yes.
That was his big thing. So they seem to be treating the wrestlers as boxers in terms of how they behave. They've got coaches, they've got private gyms, they've done that. And the film almost makes a bit more sense if you come at it from that thing, but that way. But if you're watching wrestling, you go, that's not what happens.
This is where Brel and the TV studio looking at this one match. There's one match, which, just to go through it quickly, there are, obviously because it's been connected to the WWE, there are loads of cameos in it. So, basically, there's quite a few cameos. Obviously, we've already mentioned Mean Gene Okerlund. We've already mentioned Howard Fink. We mentioned Howard Finkel is in this, which is quite fun. Jesse the Body Ventura, we know about him because, my God, that headdress is going to haunt me for life. Just, what the fuck is he wearing?
Jesse Ventura, I've seen some outlandish outfits before, but this one takes the cake.
Mean Gene, how dare you criticize how I dress? I dress for the occasion, and this is a stupendous occasion, and I'm dressed, of course, stupendously.
Stupendously, I think would have to be the word.
I'm just, right. There's also Bill. There's also Bill Eddy as well, who's basically, I think, was the first opponent, I believe, in the first match. Jake Bullet, who is, I believe, he's the other half of Demolition, isn't he?
Yeah, he's Demolition Axe.
Yeah, and here's one interesting thing: a very, 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 very young Buff Bagwell is in this movie he's extra. He's an extra. Appears in multiple scenes.
Right, I heard that, but I couldn't see him.
He's so baby-faced, you couldn't tell. He's usually hanging about in the bar scenes. So he's just hanging around somewhere, doing a couple of claps. Buff Bagwell before he got super buff, and definitely before he became a male gigolo, which is what his current status, sadly. Poor Buff.
Yeah. I've seen him come back in. A lot of wrestlers now are hitting the comeback trail every so often, and I've seen Buff Bagwell wrestle in a match where he actually it's not a bad match, but he's got that thing of the upper body and the arms are still muscular, but then there's that gut.
The dad bod situation where it's sort of
it's quite dad body, yeah, but he still looks in like phenomenal shape, but he's breathing in a bit.
Give it a bit of a tuck down. Yeah. So those are most of the cameos. There's quite a few, like, also just minor celebrities and stuff like that, but really those are the big ones in terms of wrestling. Now let's go back to after the meeting. Well, basically, Brel has just chewed out the entire staff, the entire, like, everyone there in the boardroom, calling. I love this one line. He goes up to one woman goes up and says, like, "Oh, I've got a great idea for a sitcom." It's like, and he literally goes, "No." And but for some reason, this really tickled me. He goes and says,
"Ms. Tidings, take a leak."
It's just,
and she's horrified.
He says lines that people don't talk like that at all. It's just that he's just a cartoon character, cartoon villain, isn't he?
I mean, one of my favorite things he ever says, and I've never seen anyone say this other than him. He calls everyone, all these wrestlers, jockasses. What the hell is a jockass?
I don't know. I've got a clip of when he has a meeting with Rip.
Yes.
And he tries to like make a deal with him.
Where are you going?
I'm leaving, Mr. Brel.
Wait a minute. I said, wait a minute. You're not going anywhere until you and I come to an agreement. Watch me. Are you trying to tell me my money's not good enough for you? I find that a little hard to swallow, you jockass!
There we go. Jockass. So what happens in that scene then, he looks at the blank check, Rip looks at the blank check, and they kind of think, oh yeah, you're thinking about it, but then he does this. There you go, you can hear him.
Oh my God!
So he shoves it in his mouth.
I won't be around when this.
It's amazing. And this is the bit where we're introduced to Angry Hulk, basically.
It's probably got one of the best joke in the movie, which is when he sticks it in his mouth and tries to make him swallow it. He says, "I'm not going to be around when this check clears."
Exactly.
It's the best joke.
Oh,
and
it's
also the idea that Hulk in his everyday life walks around in a full spandex bodysuit, including almost like a girdle drawstring on the back.
All his outfits are fantastic, and it's just they're so distracting in the scenes, which is great. Well, after that point, because he's said no to Brel, he's in the limo on the way back, and the limo obviously is owned by Brel, and he takes a little bit of a detour, doesn't he? And he's trying to smash his way out of the limo.
All right.
But what I loved about this scene is the music. It's got synth sexy sax. Listen to this.
Go on. This is not what you expect from your action scene. Right. Okay,
so he's just kicking the car apart, isn't he? Like 2-ton car, he's just smashing it.
Yeah. They keep showing him, whenever he kicks the side, they show the limo veers. That Hulk's kick is so strong, he's knocking the limo off course.
Right. And this is what I love about it, because this basically, once he leaves, Brel makes a phone call that I'm calling the garage. And literally, apparently, by calling the garage, he has organized a limo to take him into an abandoned warehouse where gangsters are already there to beat the hell out of him. And this is the bit that gets me, is... At this moment, I'm not entirely sure who it's supposed to be aimed for. Is it aimed at wrestling fans? Is it aimed at casual people? Is it aimed at kids? Is it aimed at adults? And then this bit happens when the car's at a full stop and everyone's ready to beat him. He's got everyone's ready to go. He fucking bursts out of the roof.
That's what I said earlier about the 1970s Incredible Hulk. It's very much sort of like that at that point. Slow motion, out the top of the car. Yeah. And he beats it's quite a good fight scene, actually. It's quite a good fight scene. He beats everyone up in this parking lot.
And it literally, most of them are with super punches. He does a couple of body slams. And you're thinking, yeah, okay. Other than the weird cartoonish, almost pyro entrance through the goddamn limo, everything else is kind of awesome. And then when he finally beats everyone up, it gets to this is the most memeable thing in the whole movie, where they go over to the smarky little, hey, the limo drivers who say now you're going to clock me out, right? So the Hulkster goes over, rips the door open, and then this happens. Why is he acting like a dog?
What's that smell?
I mean, I'm laughing at it, but I hate poop jokes. I hate toilet humor. It's really, I don't. Vince really likes toilet humor, doesn't he?
100%.
Yeah.
That's definitely a Vince line.
He was crying laughing at that when they came up with it.
See the guy melting down saying Dookie. It's such that's a kid's joke, right?
Yeah,
that's a
it's
kid's
super
joke.
gross. You see his wet trousers as well. It's just horrible. Close up.
It's on his back. How bad did he splooge? Just on the back of him.
And the thing was, if you're in a fight and you've just beaten 6 henchmen with metal poles. You know,
Yes.
you've bent one of the metal poles in the fight as someone's trying to attack you. You've been hit with one and you've just no-sold it. And then you grab someone and they crap their pants. I don't think you'd stop and go, what's that smell?
It's like, he lost all momentum.
Just completely confused him for a moment. And then the fact he's growling which he does a lot in this film. He growls like a dog at whoever it is he's fighting.
Yeah.
But he's about, 4 inches from this guy's face going, arr, arr, arr. Even when the guy's talking, you can still hear him going, arr, arr, arr.
Oh God! I think basically the roaring thing that has to be a Hulk thing. The Hulkster's going to say like, I'm gonna grunt and roar like a dog, right? And the director, just like in that horribly funny review, I don't think the director had any idea how to say no to that. I bet the director was saying like, no, that's dumb. But who's going to say no to the Hulkster? So.
I wonder how
I
many
bet the director had no say in this movie at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think he's just there to make sure everyone else was all right.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of one-take shots and it just director yells cut and just without even looking at them just goes, that's great, Hulk, let's move on.
Like, let's get out of this, let's get through this dumpster fire quickly. Funny thing is, after that, it instantly cuts and moves to the next scene, which is this is the scene when we're introduced to Samantha and more. Which,
I've got a clip of her if you want to hear this.
Yes, please.
Rip, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Pardon me?
We were speaking about your image, the Rip character. I'd be very interested in your thoughts on this.
Ms. Moore, the Rip character wants me to tell you that his main outside interest is his charity work. He says maybe you could put that in your brief.
Jesus. The reason why I've got to save that clip is because he's going on about his charity work. But before that, he was just looking at her like she's meat, constantly, like she's walking back and forth down the board meeting, and he's like, his eyes are glued to it, and it's just disgusting. But then, of course, no, I'm talking about my charity work after that point, and it's just so conflicted.
He's biting his thumb at one point,
yes,
and kind of looking away. And this was one of the things that when talking to my friend who was in wrestling, Mark, and he said, I'm not watching that film. And he said it was because of the predatory nature that is going through this film.
Yes.
I don't remember it being that bad. And then I watched this scene again. It's like, oh, I can see what he's talking about now.
It's so, and the thing is, him being like a sexy predator, right? Being like a sexual predator, it changes throughout the movie because he swaps a moment. It's like, yeah, now I'm lusting for her. Then there's moments where I'm not lusting for you at all, and you're a bitch. And then it cuts the other time. It's like, no, we're fine. We're in love suddenly. Sure, why not? Okay, keep consistency. Anyway, so I was getting mad already.
Well, yeah, I mean, she says basically, well, let's talk about it over dinner then, doesn't it? So in a bit later on, they go to dinner, and it's like a really, she says, she looks him up and down and says like, it's dressy. So he's like, obviously, because he's in spandex at the time. And like, so he turns up at this very, very posh French restaurant that's even got like a lady playing the harp.
It looks like it was a converted church that turned into a fancy French restaurant. That's what it looks like. It's got like the stained glass windows and all the weird sort of like that kind of look. So it looks really fancy. And then he walks in a full white suit and he looks so uncomfortable. He looks so awkward. He looks like he's sitting there thinking like, I'm about to burst out of this suit at any minute.
I just remember thinking, like, turns up at a restaurant in a full bright white suit, just like brave choice.
You're gonna have wine if you're having red wine. Oh no! And this is where we're introduced to the French waiter. Who? This is the thing. This entire scene is brilliant but frustrating because. Ed, I know you've got the clip at the ready. I know you have it. So I'm going to play that now and I'm going to talk about my grievances about it afterwards because my goodness. Go.
Okay, so the waiter is constantly just looking at Samantha and ignoring Hulk, and he's talking to her and he says this.
I recommend the quiche. That's cheese pie with snails to you.
No, I don't think that he...
No, moi non plus. But I'm afraid that Monsieur is looking for le hamburger américain or le foot-long hot dog.
Oh, God, I hate him.
Our menu.
He basically insults a Hulkster the entire time. Basically saying like, oh, look at you, you big bag of meat. You don't even like the fancy stuff. And then, but this is the thing that angers me slightly about this, right? He is clear. He's been told he is new here. Right? He is new here, right? He's the new host waiter. He is new here and doesn't know that Rip comes here on the regular and everyone knows him except him. So this all just feels like just a sense to be mean. This whole scene just feels to be a build-up to just be mean and to also show that the Hulkster is cultured.
Yeah, it's just a bit far-fetched, isn't it? It's like there's so much like pro-Hulk kind of like the boosting of the ego of Hulk in this movie. That it's just like, yeah, I'm Mr. Perfect in every way. Like,
no, we already had a Mr. Perfect. He can't be Mr. Perfect. But yeah, because during that bit, everyone else apparently, the entire restaurant, except this one waiter who doesn't know who the fuck he is, they all come out and go like, hey, Rip, how you doing? I'm so sorry. Has he been bugging you? He's new here. He's a dick. Meet the dick. Go away, dick. Oh, should we get the regular? Should we get the good stuff that we keep in the back, Hulkster? Oh my God. And basically it's all just done so mean-spirited that I sat there thinking, I feel sorry for everyone involved in this scene.
And then Rip speaks French, but sort of basic, broken, been doing GCSE French for a couple of weeks French.
That's made him enough to sound sophisticated and cultured.
So I suppose the next part of the movie, it kind of moves on to like Brel looking for some like entertainment, like new entertainment for the show. So he kind of goes to like a really rough bar, doesn't he, with these guys, and they check out some matches. This bar is excellent. It's got like everything going on. There's people having tattoos. There's people fighting.
I was going to say you see a woman getting a thigh tattooed as you go in. It's like.
It's brilliant. I kind of love this bar. I wish there was a real bar like this, because I love how when all the suits are going in, they're going, ugh, look at the scum. It's all just like horribly nasty people. If I went there, I'd go like, hey, this sounds like fun. There's beer here, there's tattoos here, rock music, there's a ring. Super, sign me up.
I was looking at it thinking, I've been in bars that are maybe not the Ring, but I've been in bars that have had this aesthetic. It's kind of like with the sports clock and the tires and stuff, and I'm just like, I've been in worse than this.
The clip I've got from this scene, and my favourite bit is when the two like guys, the two sort of like members of staff with Brel go to the bathroom.
Yes.
And I've got a clip of that.
Who do you call an idiot, you maggot?
Certainly not you, sir.
We meant the other idiot.
Yeah.
I mean, the gentleman.
No, don't, please.
What do we got here? A teeny wank. And here's another.
Oh my God.
It ain't even worth it.
What the hell?
So that guy is a wrestler, isn't he? The guy,
Stan Hansen.
Yeah, Stan Hansen.
He's a WWE Hall of Famer. He's famously like one of the only big major wrestlers who didn't really work for WWE. He was in Japan a lot. It's him. There's a match with him and Vader where he hits Vader so hard his eye pops out.
I've heard of that one.
Wow.
So he's a tough guy. He's a genuine tough guy. He's playing the idiot here, but he's playing this big tough guy. We had to explain the bathroom slightly because the two guys go into the bathroom. It looks, I'm not going to lie, it does look like rancid because one of the urinals is just full of piss. And then the other urinal's there's a dog in the corner, which that leaves me confused. And then these guys, and then obviously he comes out, boosh, breaks down the door, looks at their wangs, call them tiny, and then runs off. What a randomly hilarious scene.
It's not too far off his wrestling character as well, because when you first get introduced to him before the bathroom, he's chewing a massive cud of chewing tobacco.
Yes.
And that used to be, because he basically has a cowboy character, because he's the lariat, but he would come out with like this massive wedge of spitting tobacco, and it's disgusting. One of the first matches I ever saw, he comes to the ring and it's like he's got a mop head in his mouth. And it's run all down his chest and everything. And it's not even like he uses it as a weapon. He'll spit it into a spittoon before he starts. But in this, he's got the same. And if you're a wrestling fan, you'll go, that's Stan Hansen. And then you realise that it's pretty much just Stan Hansen.
They just hide him. They hide him for his character and say, hey, go, just chew and spit.
They dressed him in like 80s workout gear instead of cowboy stuff with his belly top.
Thing is, he's generally one of the, for me, he's one of the more interesting, he's one of the more fun characters to watch because he knows, he is, and like you mentioned, good thing that I didn't know he was a full-blown wrestler, but the fact that he is a genuine wrestling character. Like you could see him, you see him in other places, and he could pass for his wrestling character. This then introduced a little bit more into the bar where they realized that there is an 8-sided ring. There's an 8-sided ring, so it doesn't mean that No Holds Barred influenced the Octagon.
I think it does.
So No Holds Barred is the reason why the UFC kind of exists now. So this is the thing. They go and say, so everyone's saying like, well, where's the referee? What's happening here? It's like, there are no rules. Basically, last man standing. Basically.
Well, he says the referee's at the bar, and the referee was just chatting someone up having a drink at the bar.
Yeah, you can see the ref when they cut to the scene of Brel and the other executives, and the executives are going like, this is insane. In the background, you can see the referee, and he's slumped over unconscious on the bar.
It is amazing. It's so good. I love the aesthetic of this. I love the idea that this is basically just deathmatch rules almost in a weird way. It's just basically last man standing. If the guy can't get up, he loses. Simple. And so Brel looks at this and going like, there's money here because I'm the guy's like, what, are you crazy? You can't do it. They'll cheer for anything. Exactly. They will cheer for anything. So let's get them. And so this introduces to the Battle of the Tough Guys tournament.
The campest name that you could give to this brutal death match sort of environment. What are we going to call them? We're going to call them Tough Guys.
And then it cuts to like a montage, doesn't it, of like different like people it could be that like it's sort of like in the challenge. Yeah. And it's kind of like the village people a little bit, isn't it? Like he's kind of looking around like different members of the village people. And then like so it builds to a massive sort of TV version of this, doesn't it?
Yes,
basically.
The first televised match, yeah.
And just if you liked the Teeny Wangers joke the first time, you can hear it again now.
Let's go.
Well, if it ain't the Teeny Wangers.
Love it. They're going to make this a running joke.
Teeny Wanger.
What I love about this thing, so basically I'll display that. So like the two guys are there again, Brel's men, and they see him again. But like what I love is the waitress that's just supporting, going teeny.
Love it. I love it. It's this, because all the regulars from the bar are just hanging about. They just now put cameras in it, right? And so they bring in all these weird characters. I love how one guy, basically they're all like very cartoonish wrestler-like characters. One's a brute with an eye patch. The other guy is just like a big slob. The other guy has half his teeth. Perfect, right? And as opposed to just clobber each other. The thing with these death matches is if it's supposed, this is the thing that kind of bugs me a little bit, but I kind of like this in a weird way, is that yes, they're trying to make it look like real fights, right? So there's not a lot of wrestling moves. The only problem is this is supposed to be a wrestling movie. Where are the drop kicks? Where are the power slams? Where are the things from the top rope? We barely see this.
No, it's a lot of punching, isn't there? Loads of punches, just brawling, really.
And rest holds. It's basically a Randy Orton match. Sorry.
It's interesting because, like you said, we see all these tough guys. And you mentioned the guy with the eye patch because what this is building up to is the arrival of Zeus. And it's just a quick little gag that I love is when everybody does the stop and turn around to see Zeus enter, the guy with the eye patch lifts his eye patch to reveal his eyes completely fine.
It's all just a gimmick. Yeah. It's all just a gimmick. Before this point, I was having a really hard time with this movie. I wasn't getting behind it. And then fucking Zeus comes in the most epic way, I think, ever. He literally kicks down an entire steel wall door. He kicks down the entire door. Boosh, light booming from the back. There's only a silhouette. He's walking past, goes into it. And then you see the behemoth that is Zeus. He grabs the female producer by the face, lifts her up, and throws her and dunks her into a barrel.
Excuse me.
He keeps walking, cross-eyed, got a fucking bandage over his eye. He's looking in, and then Brel, everyone's like terrified, and Brel kind of looks over to him and goes like, let him fight. He just goes in, clobbers everyone. And I was instantly in love. He is, my God, we've got the Brock Lesnar of this bitch. We've got it. He is unstoppable.
Oh, I'd like to think that there's, in the script initially before Vince and Hogan had it, there was a little scene of Zeus just before he breaks down the wall going, okay, Zeusy, all you've got to do is knock down the wall and look really hard and you'll get on this TV show. Because what motivates you to go, how do I walk into this place? I'm going to knock that wall down. Better make sure there's some lights behind me. Okay.
So much
3, 2, 1.
So, should we hear Zeus introduce himself?
Fuck yes.
The winner and $100,000 richer, the champion of a battle of the tough guys is... What was the name?
Do you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like every kind of like horror movie trailer. You know when you get like a noise of like a monster, like at the end of it before the title comes on the screen, you get like a then a
it's also the bit where at the end of it, because you missed a bit at the end of it where we goes Zeus, and then Bro goes, I like it. It's like, I love it. Perfect. We've got our heat. We've got our big guy here. We've got our champ.
I just like the little bit of, because all the way through Brell's this super confident, super aggressive, like take no prisoners. Just that little bit where he just goes, what's your name? It's almost like he's not acting at that point. He's forgotten.
And all this is like really sort of like with Brel, he's not just excited, he looks a bit turned on by all of this, doesn't he? He's so
this is such beef, so much beef. It's the Vince McMahon loving big sweaty men trope. It is.
Yeah.
Just made by him.
It makes me wonder, because there was talk at the time, and I've seen it in other reviews where they've talked about this film, that Vince invented Brel to be like Ted Turner and almost like the WCW and other promoters.
Yeah.
But it's really just him.
It is just him. It is just implementing a little bit of him. Zeus is now officially champ of the champion of the Battle of the Tough Guys, which is a mouthful, a genuine fucking mouthful. Which then leads him to other matches. There's another match he has later on where he's literally in the middle of what seems to be a steelworks, just beating the hell out of another guy with a giant wrench.
These matches are interesting because one of them, he beats Stan Hansen, and it's the one that Rip sees on TV. Yeah. But at the end of it, he drops to one knee and reaches down, and you think, oh, this is it. He's going to hit like a killing blow. And he just seems to rip a chunk of Stan Hansen's hair out.
Yes!
And everyone looks like he's ripped his heart out of his chest.
I have made him slightly bald.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be like a feat of strength, but I'm like, I think this is the problem a little bit. Like, if it needed to, I'm not sure. I'm not saying it needed to be gorier or bloodier or more ridiculous, but there are moments like that where you could have done like, I've ripped out like his ear or something, and like, it's like, oh, whoa, that would fall more under the Japanese deathmatch rules, not like pulling a piece of his hair and go, look at it.
Yeah, well, it's only a PG-13 movie, wasn't it? Couldn't do too much, so...
Yeah, they couldn't do that,
There's like waitresses recoiling in horror like, oh my God, what's he done?
He's giving him a haircut!
This is the bit where it's basically building the relationship between Rip and Samantha.
Samantha and more.
Yeah, so there's a bit where they're traveling somewhere and they go to like... Rip goes, let me choose the dinner spot. So they go to like a proper like diner where he knows the waitress, and then this is just to show like Hogan like beating like some robbers because the robbers like enter the diner, and he just like, I don't know why they didn't notice Hogan kind of in there. Like he basically just jumps out of his chair and starts ripping the stools off, but he throws one stool, but then after that he just throws a load of pies. Well, I'll just set the tone of that, but with a little clip.
My move, hit the floor. Everybody hit the floor.
That's him just chucking pies.
I love the tunes, by the way.
Wait, lyrics. It's just like you know, on this show, we love literal lyrics.
Yes.
Like the first line of that song is, "I got ketchup on my blue jeans."
And it's just like saying, Rip comes in, destroys these robbers, makes a fucking mess of the place. And that's the thing, at the end, the woman who's there, they know each other very well. It's like, oh, thank you for stopping the robbers. Dude, are you going to pay for this shit? You've ruined the entire diner. Nothing is salvageable. There's chairs broken, tables are busted. Oh my goodness.
I love this Sega that I just like diners like this. But the thing that we miss there is that he picks the spot and they go in the limo to the private single propeller plane to go to a diner.
Oh my God,
they fly.
Yeah, because that's under Samantha's tab. Samantha Anmore's tab. It's like, oh, I've arranged everything. It's like, no. If you're doing that, let me get the diner. So they fucking fly to the diner. And that's ridiculous. This then cuts into another bit where basically they go into the hotel. The hotel that Samantha has booked. Turns out there was a little problem with the booking. And it turns out it's only just one room. Oh, no. So how are they going to coexist? Well, there's a lot of shenanigans in this sequence.
Rip creates a partition in the bed, like with some tape and some sheets. And there's this whole sort of build-up scene where they're both brushing their teeth. And it cuts to like her in the bathroom, then he's in the main room and he's brushing his teeth. And then he gets to his side of the bed, and she comes out in just her underwear. I mean, what's she trying to do? She at the time, it's like, I can't decide whether she's trying to seduce him or she's not. But I think she's a bit conflicted herself, isn't she?
Yeah.
Basically, they start going to sleep, and Samantha wakes up and hears something. I've got a clip of that.
Well, okay, come on.
I mean, what's he doing? So she looks around through the sheet.
Don't wait up for me.
And there he is doing press-ups. He wasn't wanking. There we go.
Oh, it builds up to a wank joke. It builds up to like a wanking joke. It's like, oh my God, what's he doing on his own?
We wouldn't have this problem if you'd stay on your side of the bed.
How dare you?
Hey, chill out. The bed broke.
Save it, Rip. I'm not one of your ditzy groupies.
You don't need this.
He finishes press-ups, and he jumps on the bed, and it breaks, and she just lands on him, and yet so they have this little fight, and he basically says, I don't need this partition, you put up bigger walls than I ever could.
There is a sofa that has got more of a sense of humour than you do.
Yeah, and that as well.
Storms off. But reason why I was talking like that before, because you don't cut. This is the thing you don't cut instantly to Hulk Hogan doing press ups. There's a weird ass shot where she opens the curtain and you just see the ends of his feet, and you don't know what that is, and then you cut to it, and then you see oily, suntanned, oily Hulkster doing press ups. It's an ugly sight. He's glistening in the moonlight.
It's weird because you see it's his heels, isn't it? It's like his heels are together, and I think they're supposed to look like an arse. And they're like, oh, it's not really an arse, it's his heels. And what's the next shot after that? Hulk Hogan's arse going up and down, covered in oil, and like somehow more tanned than he was when he got into bed, which is fascinating.
I know, how did he get more brown? And that's the scene there. It cuts off from there, and there we go. This then immediately then cuts after this bit, this bizarre press-up sequence. It cuts directly to Samantha and Brell, where it turns out Samantha's a mole. Oh no, Samantha's been a plan it's because she's trying to seduce. She's supposed to have seduced Rip so they could have signed over with Brell. But no, that didn't happen because somehow she grew feelings.
Yeah, so I guess that's why in the scene, she's got her underwear on, but then she doesn't want to go through with it in the end, does she? But in the actual scene. But so he then like attacks Samantha, doesn't
with
he?
A vicious slap.
Vicious slap, and she storms out of there and goes straight to Rip.
Yeah.
He backhands her so hard, and then she kind of runs out of the room. And then it does almost like a TV movie thing where he chases up to the door, which from what we can tell isn't locked. And he just puts his hands on the door frame and then turns around and looks almost at the camera, and it zooms in on him. Yes! And then it cuts to a different scene. And it's like, is that the telly edit? But I'm watching the Blu-ray edit, which they really didn't change much. And yeah, he does it there. It's like they did shoot this in parts, like for an ad break every 15 minutes almost.
And after that weird zoom in sequence, cuts to Rip and Samantha. Samantha literally confesses everything, crying, being, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. Rip starts to laugh. And turns out, it's like, hey, look, here I am trying to cry my heart out, blah, blah, blah. Saying I got feelings for you and everything else. I'm warning you. I'm on your side now, blah, blah, blah. And then they just sort of semi-cuddle on the sofa. Like, that's not how a relationship is formed. None of this is how a relationship between any partners should have been formed. But apparently that's how the Hulkster does it.
Yeah. And he doesn't say something.
Care.
It doesn't care.
He's like, I was hired to seduce you, to win you over, to get you to sign with this network. Fair enough. You know, he's not bothered.
I know. Where is the bother? Give me some bother.
Yeah, because the way he kind of cracks a joke was about, like, he says, well, there's a bill for the bed from the hotel, and then that apparently makes her really laugh like loads, and then they both start laughing.
My God. This then leads to more. This then leads into Zeus on telly demanding to fight Rip. Like there's he basically pulls out a promo and says, "Oi, Rip, I want you." Basically, champion, mano a mano.
With his 1.5 monobrow.
Yeah, we need to talk about the monobrow. What is it? Is it a monobrow where he has one eyebrow?
Yeah.
Has a V, and then kind of cuts here, and the rest of it's missing.
Yeah, it's a strange one. Part of me wonders whether it was an accident and they just went, "Oh, it'll totally work, Tiny. It'll be fine. It'll work into it." Because he's got a Z on each side of his head as well.
I think I know what it's... do you know what it looks like? I think I know what it looks like. It looks like the square root symbol. It looks a bit like the square root symbol on his forehead.
I just think he was trying to start a trend, but it didn't really work.
What trend was that? I don't know what it is. Maybe they generally thought that looked like a tough guy look, because look, he doesn't care about his personal hygiene. Look, he doesn't care about his looks. He's got a monobrow, but he also has only half an eyebrow. Grr. I don't know.
He could fix that eye easily. He just chooses not to.
Exactly. It's macho man, and not Randy Savage. So Rip is basically just he's not going to stoop to his level. Okay. At one point, it's kind of brilliant, but also such a sleazy. And again, this is not how wrestling is booked. Rip's at a charity event with kids, right? He's a charity event with kids because, of course, he is, because he needs to look lovely and humble. Then a fucking helicopter comes in with Brel and Zeus and says, "Well, are you going to do the match?" Like, this is not how wrestling is booked, mate. But still, he goes like, "Well, it looks like you're not going to do it. Your silence says it all. You are a coward," and walks away. Kind of thing.
Randy's there wearing a red clown nose, red circles on his cheeks, and a giant polka dot bow tie.
Yes!
Obviously, he's doing his bit for the kids. And one tiny lister, part of his audition must be walking. Let's see how you look if you're walking in slow motion, because he nails it.
He does.
And then he walks up to him and they lay out the challenge. And it's all like Zeus is looking super intense on his close-up. Hogan looks stoned.
He looks tired.
He looks so knackered. And there's nothing on his face. His eyes are drooping. His mouth is barely registering any emotion. And even when they show the shot of the helicopter taking off, that expression has not changed. He couldn't give a stuff.
I couldn't. For some reason, I get the feeling I would like to imagine that was the last day of the shoot. And I imagine that was like the last day of the shoot, last day. And he said, "We're going to do this one helicopter scene because we've got the outside. We'll do it in a day, no problem." It's like, yeah, that's fine. He's been doing this for many weeks now. He's tired. He's just done. You know, he's worried about the status of Zeus because he just punched him in the nose and broke it. You know, the whole thing. And then just flies away. And then the rest of the movie, he does feel kind of tired until about the match. And it's the thing I'm noticing as a criticism. Everything involved with Rip on his own isn't actually that fun, really. Everything with Zeus in it is fucking epic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Tiny Lister's proven over the years, given, the right direction and, right use of him, he's very entertaining.
He is.
If you look for him in... It's Dark Knight, isn't it? He's in Dark Knight where he's the prisoner on the boat.
Yeah.
With the remote control. He barely says anything in that, and he's incredibly intense, and he builds for a great scene. Although, being a wrestling fan, any film he turns up in now, I'm like, Zeus! Anything.
Yeah.
And then when we go to the scene where they catch Randy and Craig, who, again, I was listening to your Street Fighter episode this morning while I was getting ready, and you were pointing out how Guile just keeps revealing secrets to the bad guys. Craig, Randy's buddy, just keeps dropping Randy in it constantly.
Yeah, just calls him out.
Yeah, it's like, he's Rip's brother.
It's like, shut up. Randy should be there going, shut up.
The thing that gets me about it is Brel standing there and he goes, so you're Rip's brother, eh? And it's like, all I could think was, one, he's on telly in the first bit that you were watching.
Yeah.
Two, you've just met him at the charity event, even though he did have clown face paint on.
Fair.
And it's very apparent who he is. And Craig just keeps dropping him in it. And then Randy takes a swing at Zeus and doesn't do too badly. He escapes.
And he's doing a lot of like defensive rolls and dodging, and then the one final proper grab and throw by Zeus cripples him. And I'm thinking, and that by that point going, ooh, the stakes are higher. But here's the thing, like, I'm not sure what was the goal of it other than just to beat him up, because I feel like there was also partly a performance, because I want to show us like, are there cameras on it or not? Because it felt like, because suddenly there was a crowd and there was a ref somewhere, and then you're thinking to yourself like, well, is this now suddenly a match? Is this televised? Because this is horrendous.
It's really weird. And then there's this final shot of Brel, and he's like tears in his eyes looking at Zeus. Like he's just seen something like he's seen God, basically.
He's seen Zeus. He's seen fucking Zeus.
And then it cuts to Rip turning up at the gym.
Yeah, I've got a little clip of that.
Yeah.
So the execs are just watching him smash up the gym on the cameras.
I love the bit with the camera bit.
So he's looking. So we'll explain this because it's just mostly sounds. But what's so great, what I love about it is like he's smashing it up, and then he notices he can hear something, and he can hear them through the security camera. Like, you hear the audio of them through the security camera, and what he does is he chucks like a pole and gets it bang on, and you see like the close-up of the pole going like slowly into the camera and smashing it up.
I love how they react, because they react like they've actually just been hit in the eye. They're all going, oh no! But it's like, you should have seen that coming. Like, if this is a genuine camera shot, you should have seen Rip with a pole throwing through. Because he's going to the gym to break up his gym, because Randy's now a cripple because of him. So he goes in and goes like, rah, 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 rah. And then it leads to what seems to, the only thing I can only describe as future inspiration for the Hulk versus Ultimate Warrior in WCW, when there's a moment where Tiny Lister is somehow projected onto a mirror. And then the Hulkster runs into him and breaks the mirror, and turns out it was a projection the entire time.
I mean, I do love the private gym. Just like, we'll put the logo on everything.
This is true. If you don't know whose gym it is, you now know who it is. So he goes in, destroys everything.
Even though he's going to fight in a bar in an octagon made of, ring of police tape and barrels, we're going to have a much nicer ring in his private gym.
I know, right?
Yeah. Do you think they were inspired by Rocky IV with this movie?
I think a lot of this was trying to get Hogan a Rocky.
Yeah.
Yeah. He finally goes and sees Randy, who's now officially a cripple in the hospital.
I've got a clip of that, because it seems like Hogan has been saving all his acting for this particular scene. Let's hear Hogan acting his socks off.
Go on.
So Randy's just waking up. He's grabbing his hand.
Hulkster's crying.
He's got tears streaming down his face. It's actually quite believable, though. It is believable that he is upset in that scene.
It'd feel more real if he didn't have a black and white spandex outfit for the occasion of seeing his crippled brother.
That's what's so distracting. All his outfits, whenever he's trying to deliver a dramatic scene, his outfits are just too distracting for it to be taken seriously, which is great.
He has a spandex for every occasion, every color, every kind of creed, everything. And it's brilliant. So yeah, he's crying and basically said, "I'm gonna get whoever did this. I know you tried to protect me, but don't worry, now it's my turn." And so now he's ready for the fight. So everyone's doing their training, and then they're ready to finally we get to the fight. It's been a weird long build-up with a movie that's supposed to be about wrestling, not having a lot of wrestling in it, but we're finally getting to the big match. And it's a different venue. It feels like they built the studio. They filled it up properly. New shiny ring, still 8 sides. You've got the commentator running around doing kind of stuff. It feels like an actual production, but everyone's saying like, "Oh, this is going to be great." And when Zeus wins, it's going to be amazing. But I love one bit, one of the bad guys, because one of the other stew says, "Well, what happens if Zeus doesn't win? That would be the end of the tough guys."
All tough guys.
All tough guys. The Ed Rip is officially the tough guy. And nothing else.
They just cut to the bars with like Stan Hansen in and everyone. Zeus loses, he just takes the cigar out, puts it on the side and goes, "Well, that's it for me." And just walks off into the night.
Every tough guy officially walks into the sunset, never to be seen from again, building a colony somewhere in like Brazil and saying, "This is the tough guy camp. Enjoy."
So Brel tries to make sure that doesn't happen, doesn't he? He kidnaps Samantha. He makes it quite clear to Rip that he's got Samantha, and he has to make it look good for 10 minutes, doesn't he? And then he has to go down. And that's something that Hogan doesn't normally do.
But here's the thing, though, and this is something we have to sort of make clear. If Brel was an official booker, right? If he was the official booker of this wrestling association, right? You don't argue with the booker. So already he's saying like, right, you're going to make it look really cool for 10 minutes, but after 10-minute mark, you need to go down, right? That's booking. So, but in this case, because wrestling is seen as a real sport, this is seen as being crooked, right? Yeah, sure, this is a no screw job situation, but it's definitely, Hulk shouldn't be arguing with this if this is legit wrestling, but it's not. Which makes it even more confusing.
It's at this point, it's not wrestling, is it? Because the only bit of wrestling in the movie is right at the beginning when you see like Rip wrestling, and this is This is meant to be more like UFC in a way, isn't it?
It's deathmatch. It's deathmatch rules. So yeah, Hulk says, so basically, I think the reason why they say you got 10 minutes is because it's basically just to add more time to the movie, I think, just to add more tension, because there's no tension here, because they start brawling, they go into the ring, they start brawling. He's wearing a wonderfully blue pair of spandex, by the way. Wonderful.
And what about Zeus's shoulder pads?
Yes,
they are amazing.
He walks in like he's an extra in Mad Max. Again, and just to throw another reference, I bet you Triple H saw this and said, I could do better. I could do a better entrance.
I have to say, the bit I laughed at the most when I was watching was his entrance with those shoulder pads. I laughed so hard when I saw that because they were absolutely huge. He looked like a bloody Power Ranger.
Yeah. And Hogan doesn't get an entrance. He gets the, for lack of a better term, jobber entrance where they join in the ring, no theme music, no introduction. He's just stood there. If you watch any wrestling and they introduce your opponent, he's already in the ring by the time the main guy gets there. He's going to get his ass kicked, which is it's kind of true to life because he's expecting to go down. But I mean, you see the build up to it where like Zeus is on a rowing machine and smashing concrete blocks with his hands.
Fucking great.
Just concentrating on helping Randy. And this is the thing that gets me about this fight is Randy moving a finger is what sort of motivates Rip to get back up. But in the montage earlier, Randy's walking. He's holding on to the poles while Rip helps him. So the fact that Randy's moving a finger shouldn't mean anything.
I think the movie forgot how badly crippled Randy was. I think he forgot to say look, we need something to motivate him because we've written ourselves into a corner, basically. And so it's like, well, what if he just moves a finger? It's like, but what about all the physio training he's been doing before? It doesn't matter. At that moment in time, he's still in the wheelchair, crippled like this, standing still, and then just going like, and it just moves this one finger, and it's enough to motivate the Hulkster to properly Hulk up and beat the living hell out of him.
And they're missing a trick because, I mean, we've all got film backgrounds as well. If anything, what Randy should have done rather than move a finger is move the hand into the rip it hand symbol that we see throughout the entire film, which is for those listening in at home, is essentially the shaka bra, little finger and thumb out. He does
it whenever he can, though. It's moments like before he walks out of a door, he does and then walks out. He does it often.
In the contract scene where he basically stuffs a check down Prell's mouth, walks out, but stops to turn around and go, yeah, and then leaves. It's so weird.
So he does that often, and that's the thing. That could have been a king, or even better, to prove himself like he's feeling the power. He could. You want cheese ball? You want corn ball? How about this? He gets up. Yeah. He's sitting in the wheelchair, and then finally, through the power of his own will, because he wants to motivate his brother, he stands up. And and he's like, holy shit, he's standing up! Yes! Go, Rip! But no, it's
rips
just
the shirt.
Rips the shirt to say, rip him. And then the whole crowd goes, rip him. Yes, we're writing a better movie. But this is the problem when we talk about bad movies. We can write better movies, but it's never going to happen. Samantha escapes in just by outsmarting the goons.
Very easily, wasn't it? Really, like it made a whole big thing about her being kidnapped and held hostage, but she escapes so easily. Just literally walks out the door, pretty much.
It's really weird because she does a lot of like pushing of a chair to get out, basically. Yes! And I think the whole point of it was because the director wanted to shoot a sequence where Joan Severance was essentially bent over and he could shoot down her top.
Yeah. Oh, yes. It's so obviously trying to do a boob and a butt shot because you have two different angles. Oh, God. So she escapes very easily, joined Rip's family in on the side of the ring. And Brell doesn't notice this for quite some time until suddenly in the corner, because I think he was too distracted by Zeus beating the hell out of Rip and going, almost salivating, going, yes, beat him well. Oops, phrasing. But then notices this and tries to call like the goons and everything else. Like, why is Samantha here? What's going on? And this is where things start to wrap up, and it wraps up really quickly by this point because they do a couple of clobbering. Zeus, feeling slightly overconfident, like turns around. Rip is in the corner turnbuckle, and here's the thing though: Zeus at one point literally rips out an entire turnbuckle, the entire pole, with his bare hands and uses it as a weapon, right? And then by this point, it's like, oh, he's ripped down. He sees, the finger move. He gets up. He hulks up. Literally hulks up. And he goes, and literally his moments like, turn around, you idiot. And he's like, go on, do something. And the moment he does it, he grabs a hand. And then finally, the tide is starting to turn. Rip is winning. And Rip starts to win. Rip literally does the double axe handle out of the ring. And you think, that's it, that's the end. Nope. This suddenly becomes a full-blown ECW kind of let's just brawl around the arena kind of fight.
Yeah. He also, he's not had a lot to do in this movie, but Charlie, the coach, who said earlier on he tried to train Zeus, but he just couldn't keep him from killing people, essentially. Charlie, the coach, tries to get involved, and Zeus doesn't just kick him from the ring to ringside. He punts him across the room like he's taking a rugby kick. Because Charlie just flies, and that doesn't motivate Rip to get up and fight. But then the finger happens.
Yeah, and they go up to like the sort of where the studio area is, where like Brell is like watching.
Yes.
And so they're at quite a height now. And the fighting, I've got a clip actually of the end of the fight. Let's play that.
Go for it.
So what you heard there was Rip delivering the double axe handle off the sort of high up stage, and Zeus flies off and goes through the ring, basically.
In a perfect donut shape, by the way. He lands so perfectly into the middle of that ring. Like, and he literally just collapses and should be dead, really. The man's dead. That's a horrible height. Yes, we've seen some professional wrestlers go from extremely high heights. We've seen Jeff Hardy, we've seen New Jack, we've seen all these people jump from stupid heights. That man's dead, though, right?
And then, yeah, definitely. And then he turns his attention to Brel.
Yes.
And smashes through. Brell's in there and he's smashing everything for some reason. He's smashing up all the equipment in the studio area.
Is he just mad? He's so mad that he just wants to bring out his rage. Is that it?
He's taking it off the air so no one can see Zeus lose.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that explains it.
If you look at the monitors behind him, it says delayed due to network issues. Or network difficulty.
Yeah.
But it's really, because I wondered, because it's like, why is everything exploding behind him? And then I realised it's because he's doing everything he can to make sure no one can see what's going on.
Okay, that makes a little bit, well, I would say a little bit more sense in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, he starts ripping things up. But he's causing, like wires are exposed and tiny explosions and sparks and electrics and... I wouldn't say poor him because he's been a scumball. He's been an absolute scum the entire time. But the man, just as he's about to like do something, maybe to sort of I think there's one point where Rip's about to, he's doing his dog thing again, and just going rah, 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 rah. And then I think Brel backs up slightly, just a tiny bit, and gets fucking electrocuted. Sparks. Shizzle and all.
It's full on like he's dead from electrocution. And what's great is it cuts to the crowd going, yay! Like that.
Yes!
It's like, because they don't think it's real.
But what they did see was a man being horribly killed. And actually, two men being genuinely murdered right in front of them.
But at least his final words were, it was like, get away from me, you jock ass. It's like, I'm really going to work this in, especially right to the end.
And he does.
His death, I mean, both he and Zeus, like, his death scene is quite funny because he basically looks like he's backed into this electric wire, but when he dies, one hand is behind his back. So it kind of looks like it's gone up his backside.
It does!
And Zeus, in the build-up to Zeus flying into the ring, he does his Mortal Kombat finish him animation of just standing there and going for a really long time. He just goes staggered like, oh, I can't do anything. And then he gets hit.
Finish him. Let's finally throw the belt into the ring as we go through the trashometer. Thank you. Thank you. So, if this is the first time you have been on the show, welcome, and I'm so sorry you had to listen to this particular episode. Now, what is the trashometer? Well, we review movies a little bit differently around here. Instead of going from A to B, like A to F, or go 5 stars, no, we break it down into 5 different categories, okay? So we break it down into how trashy is this movie to the level of enjoyment. So we're talking about getting right, we want the right balance. The right balance of a good trashy movie is a good sort of 50-50 of terrible and great. You put it together, you make good trash. So here's the thing though, Ed. You have upgraded the soundboard, haven't you?
I have. So now we've got a sound drop for each rank. So let's go with, do you want to hear Tame first? Let's go with Tame.
Right, let's start off with Tame.
Ain't it a crying shame?
Tame.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yep, so that is Tame. Tame basically means, thank you, that's amazing. I love that. Oh my God. Oh, the production value's gone up through the roof.
It's from Blazing Saddles, by the way. Which isn't a bad movie, but it fit perfectly.
For that one. So yeah, Tame. So Tame basically means that it was boring. There was nothing entertaining about it. It's not even remotely bad, not even remotely good. It's just dull. It's dull as dishwater, nothing exciting. Then we move on to a tiny bit trashy. What's tiny bit trashy, Ed?
Tiny bit trashy.
Thank you. So, tiny bit trashy. I'm loving that. That's brilliant. Oh, I'm trying to keep a straight face while I'm trying to go for the rags. But okay. So, tiny bit trashy basically means that the movie, it's got elements of good, fun trash, but it could have been more. Like, it could have been better. It could have been more. It could have been trashier. It could have been a bit more. It could have been more bad. It could have been more good and had a good balance. It's slightly off. Then we get to the sweet spot, which is trash. That is the golden goose, the sweet spot, the wonderful. It is the proper main event of trash cinema. Play the piece.
It's got to be
Perfect trash.
Thank you. I'm loving all this. This is great. So yeah, perfect trash, basically. It's the right sweet spot. It moves on to the next step, which is too trashy. Too trashy is, even though we're having fun with it, there are moments we're getting quite angry and frustrated with it. We're getting to the point where we're not having, if it pushed a little bit harder, we might not have been having quite a bit of fun. Play it.
too much of something is bad enough.
Too trashy.
It's so 90s. I told you there's 90s in this.
I was not expecting. I wasn't expecting all the musical cues, but I'm impressed. Right, and then finally, we go to torture. Torture is the worst. It's the worst of the worst. It's no longer fun. We've grown an angry hatred to the movie. It's now all bad. There's nothing redeeming about it. We've had a really, really hard time with it. It was a struggle. It upset us. That kind of thing. So what's torture? And now I'm dead curious.
This is the best one.
Go.
Why can't you give me the respect that I'm entitled to?
Takes ages to get up there because it's right at the top of the meter.
Jesus Christ. The production value you've added in it.
So that's, do you know what that quote's from, Johann? Mummy Dearest.
It is. It's
Why
just
can't you give me the respect that I'm entitled to?
This is the bit. That's a bit before she leads into a point with the no wire hangers. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Right, so that's the ranking. So let's go through this together. Let's go our rating. So let's start off with you, Carl. So where on the trashometer do you think this movie should be put into, and why?
I think it's got to be in the trash going up to just shy of too much.
Yeah.
There's enough there to keep it entertaining. It's not a long film. It is pretty much bang on 90 minutes. There's a couple of bits in it that aren't necessary at all. But there's enough there to make you stare at it in disbelief, which I think is the sign of some good trash, is the fact it's almost I can't look away.
It's a car crash.
Yeah. And in this case, it being kind of such a big, in a very silly way, big part of wrestling history, in that this was the first big attempt at doing wrestling on film.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a place, but there's a lot in there where you're just like, this is. But it does hit the sweet spot enough of trash. I haven't seen this in many a year, and I did enjoy watching it again, even though there are bits of it like, that's a bit too much.
I feel here's something I want to ask you then as well. Do you think, because we're all wrestling fans to some capacity, are we more tolerant of this movie?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I think with wrestling films, we've really kind of had to be tolerant because they've all been pretty shocking. Up until, I'd say, The Wrestler, and even then we had to be quite tolerant because it was really showing the bad side of what wrestling is. So if a non-wrestling fan saw it and knew you were into wrestling, they'd be like, "Oh, but that's a really kind of seedy, like underworld, not seedy, kind of like desperate sort of world, isn't it? Wrestling's like, yeah, but then there is the kind of the nicer side of it, which hasn't been captured yet in a wrestling film, I don't think, and I don't think will be.
I think we've gotten to the point where we're all too smarky now. We're all too smart to know what that is. Now, Ed, where would you put this on the trashometer?
For me, I don't think it's perfect trash, but usually I was leaning more towards tiny bit trashy, to be honest, because it's like slightly under what I would want from a perfect movie. It's not quite hitting it like when we were talking about it, when we got breaking it down, Johann, you were saying there's bits where you kind of want it to do a little bit more than it does, and sometimes that's the PG-13 rating, but other times I think you could do more with it to make the trashiness kind of fun. So in my opinion, it's tiny bit trashy.
Okay, now here's the interesting thing. I've gone complete different to all three of you because I actually think it's too trashy, and here's the reason why.
Well, that's what Carl said, I think.
No, I think
just
Carl,
under.
Just under, because he's trash, but just under. I've gone for too trashy, and the reason why is because, yes, this movie could have been so much more, right? And it's been held back. But I think it is I think the whole thing is it doesn't know what it wants to be, to the point that it's actually got me quite frustrated. There are moments I'm saying, who is this for? Who are you aimed at? Are you trying to introduce casual fans to wrestling? If so, you're not doing a good job. Is this for wrestling fans? If so, this is not how wrestling works either. Is it aimed at kids? It's too adult for kids. Is it aimed at adults? It's too kiddish for adults. And then there are moments where I think if it had a consistent tone overall, it would have been perfect trash. If this is where I think we would fall under. If it was perfect trash, it would be like the right tone, where it would say, right, we're going R-rated, we're going to go ridiculous, it's going to go nasty and gritty, whatever. Or we're going full kiddie on it. We're going to go full kids. It's going to basically be like what would have led into things like Suburban Commando and Santa with Muscles and the Three Ninjas movie and that kind of thing. I think it's so conflicted that there were moments I said, I'm not having fun with this. I'm getting annoyed at this. So I would say I would put it under too trashy for me, but if anything, it's on the very low end.
Yeah, I think it's the reason why I went with tiny bit is because I enjoy the movie. So if I go above trash, if I go into too much or torture, they're movies I don't enjoy. But because I enjoy the movie, it's got to be, but it's not quite hitting the sweet spot. That's why it falls into tiny bit trashy for me.
And you know what? I think because you two are kind of like more in the sweeter spot than me, I'm sitting there going like, oh boy, what's this? Oh, what's this? What's this now? There's another heel turn. I think can we agree then? Maybe it's on the very high end of tiny bit trashy. Like it's just high end of tiny bit trashy. Like it's not full trash. And it could have, with a few fixes, this could have been great, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, because one of the things I was thinking about is it's not badly shot.
No.
It doesn't look bad at all. It's just the actual content of it that's incredibly patchy. I was thinking about this when I was watching it, is there's a couple of things that you could do that would improve it tenfold instantly. One is it not be, in being a fictional federation and it not be WWF.
Yeah.
And two, have Jesse Ventura as the baddie instead of Tiny Lister.
Yes, because then you can have an actual wrestling match.
You could have actual... I mean, Jesse was very limited by this point, but you could shoot round it. See, he was always in phenomenal shape, but the only reason he had to retire was he had blood clots in his lungs. So he couldn't really, massively exert himself. And that's kind of what it was. But in this scenario, you could shoot round it easy enough. And he's got charisma and can talk. So you could make Zeus more of a rounded character almost. And I can imagine if you had Jesse Ventura and Brell, it would just be like proper super evil, both cackling for 2 minutes kind of scene. Thing, and I reckon that would have really improved it. Obviously, Hogan and Vince would have still had their 3 days in a cocaine-filled motel room. But yes. I agree. I think it could have been improved very easily, and if they paid attention to their own continuity, it would have made a lot more sense as well.
So yeah,
I agree. I'm willing to drop mine down to just at the high end of not enough trashy.
Yeah,
Or
I think
what you said
we'll
there.
put on. I think you know what, we'll agree. This is on the high end of tiny bit trashy.
Okay.
Tiny bit trashy.
Thank you. We're officially that meter has now got production value. It's before it was just like a tiny little thermometer. Now it's got neon sides and a boom box.
I mean, when I was making those, I was having so much fun. I was laughing at my own jokes, just like at the computer.
Believe me, you've made the trashometer feel like some kind of like a, you know, it's sort of like fairground ride.
I just like the idea of you like turning to a mirror in the room, going, "Ed, you've done it again."
Exactly.
This is comedy gold. But one thing to throw out before we wrap up then is time to do our plugins. So in other words, Carl, where can people find you? Is there anything you want to plug? Drop all the stuff.
Well, as I say, I do a number of podcasts. I also do things like I run a short film night, which is where we first met, I think, many years ago.
Yeah.
And I decided to get an All My Links page because it's way easier to plug that than it is a lot of individual things.
Yeah.
So if you want to find me, it's allmylinks.com and then / Mr. Carl, and it's the unabbreviated MISTER, and you can find everything I'm up to on there because it seems to be changing on a weekly basis at the moment.
You're in a new project pretty much every other week.
No, I'm part of the We Made This podcast network, and it's such a lovely collective of creative people, but it can lead to, on our Discord, just like, what about this? Yeah, what about this? Yeah. And then there's that moment where we all step back and go, when have we actually got time to do all of this? And
good question.
That's been a thing that we've kind of been wrestling with at the moment.
That sounds a bit like the enigmatic WhatsApp group, to be honest.
Yeah, every time I say, oh, we're doing this, and you go like, oh, we're doing that. Oh, I'm doing this in a minute. Oh, we're doing great. It's like, how's everything going? We haven't started any of this yet. Like, it'll happen eventually. Just take your time. And it's like, well, we're doing this now. Oh, okay. Yeah, it sounds like wonderful chaos.
Yeah, well, I love it. I love making podcasts now. I think I've been doing it now over 10 years off and on.
Yeah.
So it's something I enjoy a great deal, and it's been good. And it's been the upsides of being indoors for over a year is the fact that been able to meet a lot of other podcasters and appear on a lot of other podcasts, which is easier because I don't have to edit anything.
This is very true. So so thank you very much for joining us. You've been an absolute wonderful guest. Your insight into wrestling has actually really helped me fill in some gaps while watching this movie. So thank you very much for that. Ed, is there anything we have at the moment? Anything coming up?
Well, on the Enigmatic main YouTube channel, the next thing that's going to come out that I've been working on, I'm going to be editing soon, is a top 5 R-rated movie toys aimed at kids. So, you know when you had things like RoboCop and like Alien type toys. I don't reveal the whole list, but like you got
so R-rated movies with toys.
Yeah, so that's on my Retro Saturday Rewind show, which is basically sort of inspired by the whole Saturday morning nostalgia.
Yeah, which is wonderful. I've been loving that. I've been loving every time you're doing those lists at the moment. And that's doing all right. On the Enigmatic Play channel, there've been loads of new videos up at the moment. We're doing the Twitch stuff as usual. I've been playing through Grim Fandango for the first time, and I'll tell you right now, I forgot about Moon Logic until I played that game. My God, the leaps in logic is outstanding. So I've been playing
that's point and clicks for you.
That is point and click, but my God, Grim Fandango takes the flipping cake. So I've been doing that a little bit as well. Greg's now got a PS5, so hopefully he'll get some new shiny content on that end. And on the Trash Tapes, we've just been uploading old episodes. We've been working on new stuff, on just trying to get new content out there whenever we can. And it's slowly but surely building up. Hopefully hopefully after this point on, we're going to have some new guests, new stuff, everything on. So keep an eye out for that. So
Oh, by the way, the next backlog episode of the Trash Tapes going onto the YouTube channel is going to be Samurai Cop.
Fantastic.
So that's going on to the YouTube channel soon.
Oh, that's a corker of an episode. That was our 2nd year anniversary episode. That was fun. So yeah, fantastic on that. So let us wrap things up for there. Let's ring the bell. Let's call it a day. The pay-per-view's down. We're all done and dusted, and we're gonna call it a rest because my feet are tired. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and keep an eye on your trash. There might be some treasure in there. See you all next time. Adios.
See you guys.
Thank you guys very much for watching. If you like what you see and want to see more trash like this, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We also got the Trash Tapes audio podcast, which is available on Spotify, iTunes, and all other platforms. So, until next time, keep an eye on your trash. There might be some treasure in there. See you guys later.